Well, I'm back for a fourth time and I changed my mind and I figured why not? Let's go ahead and tackle the great white whale while I've got a chance here while I'm off and not really doing anything. So the White Album by the Beatles, going to rank these in my order of preference. The songs on here, which is 31 songs by my count. I'll explain that as we go along. So this album was. When I got into the Beatles big time when I was a little kid back in 1973, this was one of several that my brothers, I guess they had or never had, but didn't have at that time. I got a bunch of their albums, kind of appropriated them, and this was one that was not in the bunch, unfortunately, because I heard about it and had heard about it and wanted to hear it, but being 8 or 9 or whatever I was, I didn't have the $12 or $13 of the double album cost in those times. So I didn't get this right away, didn't get to hear it right away. I did, somehow a cousin of mine, a really mean girl, had a copy of this, and I don't know how she was older, she was my brother's age range, and I got to hear her copy, but just, she was over at my brother's place or something and had it. I don't remember the circumstances, but I got to hear it, but I didn't get to borrow it. And somewhere around 1974 or 5, I got a 8-track tape version of this. Sort of, kind of I guess my mom or dad bought it for me. I don't know, it's a birthday present or something. But I remember seeing the 8-track for it later on in the stores, and it was just the regular album like this. I mean, the cover was, which had the Beatles there. I don't know if it was embossed on the 8-track or not, and it was just called the Beatles, and it was 2 8-tracks in a box. The one I got was called the Beatles White Album, and the cover had a picture of a field full of bare trees and snow. So I'm thinking, I don't know where they got that, maybe at a gas station or something, or who knows, but maybe that was just a bootleg. But it was only the first, it was only one tape, so the second one wasn't there, so you only got like the first album of this set, not both of them. And then finally, round about the time I was maybe 11 or 12, I got a copy of the album, a vinyl copy, for Christmas or a birthday or something. But I was thrilled to finally have a copy of it, to delve into it. And this is an album that's, I mean, to this day, that's nearly 50 years old. You know, it's almost 49 years old, that still can't figure out completely, still full of surprises, still full of wonderful things. One of their best albums. All their albums are great, but came out on November 22nd of 1968, which of course is a famous date from 1963. The Oddly enough, this would be the first year of the 60s that someone else would have the best album of the year in my view, which would be the Kinks' Village Green Preservation Society, which also came out November 22nd of 1968. Even though they're just a uh, just a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of an inch apart, but the Kinks just take it. November 22nd of 1963 would see the release of With the Beatles and Phil Spector's Christmas album, so it's kind of uh, a notable date for great album releases, I guess. Anyway, so I finally got the album. This album is, it sounds like the Beatles and it doesn't sound like the Beatles, and it's like nothing else they did before and nothing else they did after. Not that they made too many albums after this, because they were almost to the end of their career at this point. And in a lot of ways, it's seen as 4 solo albums, with them really just coming in and writing their songs and doing them, and using the other Beatles as a backing band more than as a functioning band the way they had been up to this point through Revolver and Pepper and Magical Mystery Tour and in the earlier days. Even though there's some where they are like a band, but there's a lot of it where it's just sort of John doing his songs and George doing his songs and Paul and so forth. Got 4 George songs, which is the most you'd ever had on a Beatles album to this point, and you got a Ringo song, his first true. He'd had a co-writing credit on Rubber Soul and Magical Mystery Tour, of course, with Flying. And here he's got his first actual songwriting credit. So they're all four well represented, and it's famous arguments, of course, being that this might have been better as a single album. I don't subscribe to that ideal, but that goes around. But then you can't get anyone to agree on what should be cut and what should be left in if you were to make it a single album. And I think everything here flows together and makes a perfect picture or theme or album. And very rough and tumble year in 1968 with racial problems and riots and anti-war demonstrations and Martin Luther King and Bobby Kennedy and Vietnam and a lot of turbulence in this album, and to a lot of extent Beggar's Banquet by the Rolling Stones and some other albums that came out this year reflect that the Summer of Love also from the year before, the dreams of that had kind of died on the vine rather quickly, and so there's some disenfranchisement, disappointment, and I think that's sort of seen in this album and some other albums from 1968. But anyway, what else? Number one album, naturally, and I liked a magazine that I read, Mojo, I think it was, or maybe Uncut, that was talking about this album that's issue from 10, 20 years ago that said the Beatles stood on the shore and looked upon lands that other people didn't even know existed when they were making this album. Just kind of like that. So we'll go, like I said, I've got it at 31 songs. We'll go from 31 to number one. And this is the first Beatle album where there's some songs that I'm not that crazy about, and there's a lot of them that most of them I am, though. That's what I meant to say. So, number 31, Wild Honey Pie. I hate that song. And that's one of the, I think, two Beatles songs that I just flat out can't stand. And I remember from the first time I heard it to now, just that doom 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 doom. You know, I can't stand it. I don't know what they were doing there. I'm glad they never did it again. When I listen to this in the car on CD at the end of Obla Di Obla Da, I always reach over real fast and punch the next song button so I don't have to hear the stupid thing. Can't stand it. So that's obviously number 31. Number 30, Mother Nature's Son, one of Paul's songs. Very sort of bucolic, mellow song, sort of maybe a little ahead of its time, because it sounds to me like the singer-songwriter type music of the early to mid 70s, and I don't mean that as a compliment. It's sort of like Brad and James Taylor and Seals and Croft and Chris Christopherson type music, and in other words, it's pretty damn boring. I don't hate it. When I'm listening to the album, I let it play through, but I really never liked it. It's just dull. It's pretty, but it's dull. Number 29, Why Don't We Do It in the Road? Why didn't we maybe leave this off the album and put Not Guilty by George Harrison on it instead? Well, obviously, they didn't want George to have 5 songs. That would be crazy, but this is just Paul trying to be controversial. It's I can live with the song, but it's just not very good. I don't know if he had heard like the MC5 and some of those bands like that from the late 60s and was trying to be trendy or something. It's just I can live with it. It's just not a very good song. Number 28, Piggies, one of George's 4 songs on the album. A little bit heavy-handed and ham-fisted in the lyrics. It's not a bad song. I like the little juvenile. I like the grunting pig noises. I like when he says one more time. The music's okay. I mean, I like it, but it's the least of George's songs here, and it's okay, but it's okay. Number 27, Your Blues, John Lennon song, which is a good song, a good rock and roll song. It's kind of like the song. It's just it's depressing, which shouldn't really figure into the rating. But John, and wasn't so much known back then, was pretty heavy into the drug scene, and at a low time of his life. He was at a high time of his life because he just met Yoko and fallen in love, but he was going through divorce with Cynthia, and he was sort of relegating control of the Beatles more and more to Paul through Pepper and Magical Mystery Tour. I think he was not going through the happiest time of his life, and then there was he was wanting to break away from the Beatles, as him and George were probably wanting to do, and there was dissension within the group, which couldn't have been that much fun. And it kind of shows in the lyrics of this. And at one point, I think he's just sort of lampooning the British blues explosion, where all these white British groups were doing blues music in the 68 or so. But at the same time, I think there's some real pain reflected in the lyrics. And, well, it's a good rock and roll song. I don't dislike it, but it's kind of a depressing song. Ditto for number 26, I'm So Tired, another Lennon song, which is actually a really good song. It makes you feel tired just listening to the thing, though. It wears you out, and you can tell that he was kind of worn out himself and probably really feeling those lyrics. But it is a great song. So yeah, and actually should have flipped 25 and 26 now that I look at it. But number 25, Blackbird, Paul song. It's supposed to be about the civil rights and that struggle, which Paul has denied, saying that it's just about, I don't know, about a blackbird, I guess, but I think he might be fudging a little bit there. It's a pretty song. It's a nice song. The message is good, certainly. It just never thrilled me all that much. Don't dislike it, but, you know, it's okay. 24, Don't Pass Me By, Ringo's song, which I actually really like. There's other songs on here I like more. Country sounding thing with fiddles and all that. Kind of a precursor to Bakuza Blues solo album that he would do here in a few years, just a few years down the road. Pretty good song, so I like it. Just like some more stuff on here. More, better, more, better, better, more. Number 23, Birthday, which I loved when I was a kid, and I still do to some extent, but I guess I've just heard it too many times over the year. Every time there's someone's birthday, like on the radio or something, they used to play that all the time. A radio station around here used to play that thing daily about, and then they would list famous people's birthdays. Great guitar, just a bunch of shouting and singing, and a bunch of people are singing on it. Patty Harrison is singing on this in the background somewhere there with a whole bunch of people. It's a fun song, and it works, but, you know, I like it, but it's got to go somewhere, and so it goes on number 23. Number 22, Julia, John song, very beautiful, sort of dispels the thought that Paul writes the tender, romantic, thoughtful ballads, and John's the rough and tumble guy. Of course, there's other examples of that that prove that's not entirely true. And here he's singing to his mother, about his mother, I mean, and singing, well, maybe to her also, and singing about Yoko. Very tender, heartfelt song. Very nice song. Just it's another one that I like, but I admire it more than I actually enjoy it, even though I like it fine. Number 21, another John song, Bungalow Bill. The next two are sort of children's songs, even though they don't sound like children's music. They sound like rock and roll. But Bungalow Bill is one of those, another song on here that I like, but just like it. Number 20, another one that I really loved when I was a little kid, Rocky Raccoon. Seems a little bit kind of silly now, but I love the word. I love the lyrics. I love the way Paul just spits them out, and there's this whole picture. It's like a movie in your head or mine. There's a whole plot and story and beginning and middle and end, and it's like a Western, and Westerns as a genre of film were kind of starting to go out in popularity by 1968. But it's a shame someone didn't make a movie of that, because it it's really a movie. The song itself is a movie in your head, but it's fun. It's kind of goofy. I did like it more when I was younger than I do now, but I still like it a lot. So there's that. And let's move on to number 19. Long, long, long. This is a song when I was a kid. Rocky Raccoon, I loved when I was a kid. Long, long, long. I thought long, 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 long. I thought was boring as hell when I was a kid. You could barely hear him singing, and it was just. Now I like it quite a bit, a lot more than I did when I was a kid. It's um, it's like a very late night sort of hungover, tired, but having a nice night type song, and I really like it a lot more than I did before. Number 18 is the song that probably the least played Beatles song of all time, is my theory, because it comes after Revolution number 9. So I figure most people just, once they hit Revolution number 9, they just turn the thing off, and so they skip that and they skip Good Night. Another one that I thought was kind of smaltzy and so forth when I was younger, I've come to like it, and it still is, but I like it. It's like an old Disney film or like an old Hollywood movie from the 30s or 40s, music from that. And I like that the White Album is not a happy and upbeat album the way most Beatles albums are, or positive. Beatles aren't happy and upbeat in like a Donnie and Marie fashion, but they were always positive and upbeat for the most part, even though they were realistic and they did have their music did have sadness and so forth, For No One and I'm a Loser and other songs that you can find, but they always had a hopeful, positive vibe to them. And this album, as great as it is, really doesn't. There's very little hope or upbeat, but what little there is comes in. Good Night is one of those songs, and it's sort of like it's been a terrible day, go to sleep and maybe things will be better tomorrow, or this is a horrible dream and turn over and dream happy dreams, and when you wake up things will be better type, or things are terrible but let's hope for better if you want something a little more realistic. It's a very lush and pretty song. I like it a lot more now than I used to. We are up to number 17, which is Honey Pie, one of Paul's vaudevillian, sort of old-timey 1920s, 1930s songs. Uh, some people don't like that side of him, think it's kind of silly, and would rather he do the rock and roll or the serious songs, but I get a kick out of it. I always enjoyed it. It's kind of cornball, but in a good way. So I put it at 17. 16, George Shows Up Again, Savoy Truffle, which is about Eric Clapton eating too many sweets and having to go to the dentist because he gets cavities, or it's about Eric Clapton taking too many drugs, if however you want to read it. Love George's singing in it. Love the I guess it's the piano that starts it off. It's just a cool song. It's seen as one of the lesser of his songs on here, that and Piggies, but I like it. Number 15, it had to go somewhere. It'd probably be most people's least favorite on this album. I did a whole video on this song, if you want to call it. I like it. Revolution number 9 goes at number 15, and I could talk about that at length, but I already did, so if anyone's interested, you can go find the video that I did on that not too long ago. Number 14, USSR, Back in the USSR, great rock and roll track, kind of a after all the psychedelic and psychedelia of Pepper and Strawberry Fields and Magical Mystery Tour and even Revolver, this is kind of a return to form of just basic rock and roll for them. Kind of the Beatles doing the Beach Boys in a way, kind of a takeoff on the Living in the U.S. or Back in the USA Chuck Berry song. And good song. I love the song. I don't know that it's the best choice for the opener of the album, but I guess it works as well as anything else on there. I'd have to think about what would be the better opener. Anyway, USSR at 14. Number 13, While My Guitar Gently Weeps, another song that I thought was very well done, and nice, but I thought it was kind of boring when I was younger. That's changed over the years where I really do love it nowadays. And I think this is as good as anything Harrison did on Abbey Road with something, or I might even rank this above something. Definitely would rank it above Here Comes the Sun. In the overall, there's Harrison songs I like better with the Beatles that were Taxman and some others, but and one on the album that follows this that I like even better. But I love While My Guitar Gently Weeps, a great song. Can't fault it at all. I put it at number 13. Number 12, Happiness is a Warm Gun. Just great. It's like three songs in one put together, but they mesh together perfectly. I love the vocals. Some of Lennon's great vocals, of a career of great vocals. Um, just just a great rock and roll song. Not really sure what all he's on about, but great song. Number 11, Obladi Oblada, which is another one that I always liked, but I liked less once upon a time. I like it a lot more now. This is one that a lot of people don't like. Think it's silly. It's Paul McCartney trying to do ska or reggae. Um, I like the way he sings in the marketplace, just the way he sings that for some reason. I think it's a bouncy song. I like it quite a bit. George and John, I think, hated this song. But number 10, I Will. Really nice ballad, romantic ballad from Paul McCartney. Pretty short and sweet, simple song. Heartfelt. Like that a lot. Number 9, Glass Onion. John song where he references a lot of earlier Beatles songs. And I love it. I love the way that it does that weird, just changes musical pace or tempo at the very end into that sort of unsettling. I don't know what that is. It's a keyboard or a synthesizer or orchestration or whatever at the end when it just goes into that. A lot of vocal asides and musical asides and detours on this album, which is one of the things that makes it so great, and which sort of lends an air of mystery and menace to this album too, truth be told. Number 8, Everybody's Got Something to Hide Except for Me and My Monkey. Kind of a silly song. I guess that's John singing about him and Yoko, but just the guitars are great. The come on, and Ringo with his percussion going a million miles an hour. Um, it's a slight song, but it just rocks along, and it's a great song. Yeah. Number 7 is Helter Skelter. Great rock and roll song from Paul. Apparently, he said he wanted to outdo the Who or something, I believe. And the funny thing is, because I got this album, like I said, I think I was like 11 or 12, so I knew Helter Skelter before I knew the whole Charles Manson connection thing. And when I got this album, and even before I got this album, I had heard from a friend at school who had older brothers and sisters, like I had older brothers, about the whole Paul is dead rumor and the clues on the albums and all that, and playing Revolution Number 9 backwards and the hand over his head on Sergeant Pepper and all that good stuff. But I didn't know about the Charles Manson thing until 1976, I think it was, when that TV movie Helter Skelter came out, and so that had a whole different spin on it, unfortunately. But I always just thought, I just thought it was a great, just blinding, driving rock and roll song when I first heard it, which was a year or two before I saw that movie on TV when I was 12 or 13. And the fact that some idiot used songs as part of his reason for killing people is tragic and unfortunate, but it didn't take away from my enjoyment of the song, because it's not the Beatles' fault that some goofball misread their songs there, I guess. Uh, yeah. So, number 6, Martha, My Dear. Another one of Paul's granny songs, a lot of people say. It's a song about his dog, supposedly, Martha the sheepdog. Some people say it's about Jane Asher, that this was the time they were separating and breaking up, or probably they had already at this point. I love the piano intro. I love the the horns and the music, and it's just a bouncy, great melody. Just always loved the song. Number 5 is why I've got 31 songs on this instead of 30. I call it Can You Take Me Back? That unsettling, creepy, weird Paul thing before Revolution number 9. Can you take me back where I came from? I have no idea if that was supposed to be, and if I ever met Paul, which probably never will, I would ask him if that was ever supposed to be a regular song, and or if it was just meant to be a little snippet, a little bridge piece of music between the two, if that was written specifically for Revolution number 9 when they were sequencing the album and putting it together, if it was something that he already had around and said, hey, this would work here. It's a perfect intro to Revolution number 9, and it's a perfect summation to me to the feel of this album, of just being sort of dark and unsettling and unsettling. Yeah. So anyway, Can You Take Me Back is number 5 for me, even though it's just a little 20-second or whatever snippet of music. Number 4 is Dear Prudence, just a great song, just soaring. One of John's great songs. The guitar work, the vocals, the George's guitar work of John will sing a lyric towards the end, and George's guitar like echoes what John just sang. Just beautiful. Number 3, Revolution number 1, which is basically the flip side of Hey Jude. Revolution is the harder, more rock and roll driving version. This is the more sort of muted version, but I love both of them, and depending on which day, which one I love more. But I do kind of like the laid back one. It's really great. Number 3, Sexy Sadie, John's song about the Maharishi. Love the piano, love the vocals. It's just a great song. And number 1 is one that I think a lot of people don't hate but don't like so much. But my favorite's always been Cry Baby Cry. It's just sort of a sinister, disturbing fairy tale, which is kind of in line with the real fairy tales, the Grimm's brothers and stuff. Those were a lot darker before they were kind of sanitized in the I guess 1900s for kids to make them more friendly and stuff. But it also another song that just sort of perfectly captures the mood of the album and the year, and just not sure, confusion of what's going on and trying to figure things out, which is a lot like the days nowadays. So there's my take on the White Album. Next up, we'll do Yellow Submarine. Oh, if anybody's still here and watching this, Happy New Year's, as I said earlier in one of my earlier videos today. But I was just wondering, is eating black-eyed peas, is that a thing you all do every New Year's Day for luck, or is that just a Texas or a Southern thing? I don't think people do that in other parts of the country or other parts of the world, but that's sort of a tradition thing, is to eat black-eyed peas on New Year's, first day of the year for luck, which has nothing to do with the White Album, I don't think. Have a good one.